All right, guys. I'm gonna try this new format out for myself here. Reading my blogs out and commenting them, seeing how that fares on YouTube. Leave a comment if it's a good idea, and just let me know if you have better ideas on how to convert these blogs. Right? Um, I believe I have 77. So if we look at my blogs, I have 77 blogs. So that could be like 77 videos, right? And we can see if we can make something from it. Um, but yeah, I'll start reading along. How to learn programming, okay? Stuff that people don't tell you about it. So, your first concern with learning to program should be to have the right motivation. Always showing up and grinding daily should be your motto if you really want to see results. Managing your motivation for the long term is the singular most important thing you can do to learn to code. You should be coding every day. The truth of the matter is, length of time learning is the most significant statistic in learning to program. It takes hundreds of hours of learning just to get down the basics and hundreds more to learn a language well, possibly thousands of hours. It is the path everyone must take. Take it or leave it, that is how it's done. Yeah, for sure. The more time you spend under pressure, under actual coding or reading how to code or listening and watching lectures, whatever your style is, uh, basically it piles on top of each other, right? Like previous learned experience and knowledge is how a coder is made. And typically, when people start coding, they believe it's only going to take, like, let's say, 100 hours to master Java. And that is just not the case. It takes way more than that and way more effort and daily effort because your knowledge doesn't solidify by the hour, but by the days and weeks, right? And you need that time under pressure and cooking time. Like once you've learned it, it has to be in your noggin for a specific amount of time. So take it or leave it. That's how it's done. Table of contents here. This is the basic outline. Manage your motivation. Making money in America, right? That's the clarification. Making money in America is not a good motivation to learn how to code. So I don't know why I did that. Number two, determining your learning style. So how do you best learn, right? And then I list the learning styles. The more you learn in one style, the better. And then learning the fundamentals and resources. So let's talk about managing your motivation. So I personally find two viable long-term reasons to code. One, to have fun, and two, to become a better human. So there's this little meme, this presenter, I think it's a Microsoft presentation. It was like, always be closing, right? But they replaced it with coding. Not too sure if it was Microsoft, but yeah. You will find as you learn to code, your general proficiency with technology itself improves significantly. You will come to understand most to all apps better and better as you learn computer science, also known as programming. Yeah, and I've noticed that, like, me personally, the better I get at programming, the more frameworks that I use, and like, when I started learning Android Studio years ago, I was able to understand the apps on my phone so much better just because I understood how like the details of the abstraction, right, of the code. And it became less of a mystery, like I was learning how to post to the Google Play Store. And it gave me an insight to all these apps that I absolutely needed, and I realized it's actually a lot easier than it looks. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without programming. So it helps just to make you a better human in that way. So making money is not a good motivation. Perhaps only in America, learning to code for a software engineering job just is not viable anymore. Jobs are highly gatekept and flooded with programmers looking for a salary. So basically, there's an overpopulation of programmers who are entry level, and it's impossible to get into that job market for some people. um, especially because the standards are so high, basically. In America, even those with experience and seniority are having difficulty finding programming jobs here in 2024. Perhaps if the market in this country changes, this motivation can become viable. At this time, if you look at YouTube videos on software engineering jobs, you can look at the comments. There are many, many people saying they are applying at 1,500 plus jobs and still not getting any software engineering work. So let me show you an example of that. Um, YouTube.com. I believe it was a software engineering deficit, and here it is. So like I remember reading this, I mean watching this video and then reading the comments, and it's like a bunch of people saying that they uh, like how can there be a dev shortage? Uh, there is no labor shortage. It's actually a shortage of skills, and that makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of programmers that don't really know how to do it professionally, and they're trying to enter the market and be trained, but companies don't want to train them. And yeah, it says right here there are about 2.5 times more IT grads in a given year as there are job openings for IT. It's not that there's a shortage. It's just that people don't want to. They don't have a willingness to train juniors, basically. Um, and I've seen other YouTube videos where people will be saying like 1,500 job applications plus, or I've been doing this for years, or I just got laid off. I have experience, but I still can't find a job. Um, and you'll see that sprinkled throughout YouTube. So, this is just the state of things right now. If you live in India, China, and other countries, this motivation is more viable. The motivation to make money. Often in these countries, you can land a job after as little as 15 applications. In the US, a more sustainable reason is instead fun and self improvement. So, your goal should be to learn over time. More time learning equal results, and that is the key. Yeah, I have a friend who lives in Korea, and I remember him saying people were getting jobs over there like super easy, entry level, junior. I've seen other engineering friends when they move back to India, they have a much easier time than over here in America. Same thing in China. Just a whole different market over there. So, next thing, after managing your motivation and aiming for time learning rather than actual results, um, the next part would be determining your learning type. So, in using this time that you're putting in wisely, it is massively important to determine how you naturally learn. So, learning in sync with your natural style requires less motivation and can be way more sustainable. It can make or break you as a coder. So let's continue reading this because it'll make more sense later. What happens outside your style? So in the past, this is just my story. I tried programming many times but failed to catch on to basic code. In my teens, I was placed in front of code and asked to read it. That failed. I was told to simply write code. That failed. I took some courses in college in my early 20s. We're talking about me here, right? And of course, that failed. It was a senior class, and I knew nothing of programming. So basically, the course was way too advanced, and I had no prior knowledge, so I couldn't keep up with the other students. And what was funny, um, I was not doing. I was finishing the assignments completely wrong and not doing them well, but they were still giving me A's and B's, and I didn't fail the class, but I should have. Like while I was programming, I wasn't learning anything, and I wasn't even programming, right? I was like writing down pseudocode and all that, and I didn't learn anything. It was data structures and algorithms. Like it was like the fourth class in a series, and they said I could skip the first three, and I wasn't smart enough to realize I needed the first three, and I took the fourth one. It's really my bad. And I never took a real entry level computer science course and just assumed I sucked at coding. So for the next 7 years, I didn't code. And finally, at 27, I took my first actual entry level computer science class. right? The course was an introduction to computing where I was taught what a variable was, loops, conditionals, and all super entry level stuff. Yeah, so it was basically like what compiling is, why software needs code, why everything's written in code, the difference between high level and low level, just all the super basic entry level stuff. And I knew none of that, and it always seemed too hard to learn in the first place. So, this college style of learning from a lecture on theory just took during the class, and I needed to learn the basics in the theoretical style. And I didn't know that. Like, I thought this whole time I had to be like everybody else in looking at code and learning from the code itself. And once I caught on that I was a theoretical learner, for the first time I was learning. Yeah, I'm reading the article here. I was learning successfully in my style. And ever since then, I stuck to that style and never stopped. And people might think that's strange, the fact that I can watch a 2 hour lecture on machine learning, and that makes me a better coder. Like there was this YouTube video. Let me see if I can find it. How to tune an LLM, right? Fine tune. There it is. There's this lecture video here. This one, fine tune LLMs. It didn't show like any code, like zero code. It was all theory. And I watched the whole thing, and all of a sudden I was able to do like Google Notebooks and all that, right? And it was crazy because that's not something that most people talk about, like um, how we can all have different coding styles, right? And me personally, I am a theoretical learner, so I can watch and read theory for a few hours and actually improve as a coder. And when I tell people my learning style, often they are surprised. It seems strange. And I can read theoretical blogs, watch a lecture, and then suddenly I'm a better coder in that topic, especially reading code. If I figured that out much sooner, it would have saved me a lot of hassle. So I'm going to list the learning styles. So the only way to figure out your learning type is trying each one and seeing which works best. So for your experimentation, like you as the listener, here are a few distinct learning types. So the first one, which is just me as an example, is a theoretical learner. So a theoretical learner doesn't do well with magic. Okay, and in programming, the term magic means when something works but you don't know how. It's kind of like the idea of abstraction. When something is hyper abstracted, it becomes theoretical. So a theoretical learner can't handle magic. They have to understand it in order to learn it. So I'm a theoretical learner in that way. And once I understand the magic, everything makes sense. It's pretty wild. Um, Readers, so everything has to be in a written form for readers. Watchers, you need visualization like pictures and code alongs. Coders, you can only code, but you are damn good. Like you just read that code, write that code, and that's literally how you learn, just a pure coder. Documentation geeks, so this is a really cool learning style. You can read documentation and really learn that way. So try each one and see what takes for you. If you are um, if you are a beginner watching a computer science fundamental course, there's a video here. I should fix that, but introduction to programming free code camp. This is one of the best introduction to programming videos I've ever seen. Introduction to Programming Computer Science full course. So it's very theoretical, and it's very good for theoretical learners. So highly recommend. It might take, it might not take. If you are a theoretical learner like me, courses like this one right here by Free Code Camp are amazing. Udemy, these are king. Like Udemy theory videos, freaking awesome. Um, for example, on Udemy, there are these graphics programming courses. Uh, those are freaking amazing because they teach the entire graphics pipeline in a theoretical fashion. And for me, I can listen to 8 hours on how a framework functions in the background, then actually code that framework. So I tried coding a triangle in graphics programming and could not, like, um, for days. And I began to read a theoretical blog and was able to do it. Like, within 1 or 2 days just from learning how the API works, the graphics API. But I can't look at code and figure it out nowhere near as easily. If you are a coder type, you will find you can literally glance at code and your eyeballs just naturally understand. So just look at that and understand it. If you are a reader type, you can take any blog like this one and learn at ultra speeds. Readers would be great at the Head First series on Amazon. So Head First, these guys they created a bunch of books on learning the theory of languages and frameworks. So let's say you want to learn SQL in a theory way. The Head First is just basically a theory first guide, and so it's extremely helpful. One of the best books I ever read for myself, because remember I'm a theoretical learner, was Head First Java. Head First Java was just, oh my gosh, so good. It explained object-oriented programming in such a great way, and yeah, Head First programming. Yeah, all of these are good for the theoretical learner and the reader. Documentation geeks are oh, we skipped this one. If you are a watcher, you will love code-alongs and tutorial explanations. Some people thrive on code-alongs, not a bad thing and not a myth. Documentation geeks are amazing. They can look at a manual and naturally take on the code. We're talking like the Unity manual, right? Or, uh, for example, um, I was I wanted to cater to people with this framework that I work on. Um, I'll show you a good example. Let's see. I made this documentation for people who are documentation type learners. Um, Documentation looks kind of like this. So you read like a getting started guide on whatever. This is for Darken, which is a open source project I work on. And you're able to like read stuff like this, and you're able to just completely understand it. Um, so like Unreal documentation, for example. You're able to read stuff like this. All of these, these are usually huge. Like they have all this detail, and some people are just amazing. Somehow they magically can learn from this. I could barely, I can half learn from this. I'm not as good as an actual natural at this, but I'm a lot better than I used to be because I've done it so much. And sometimes you have to learn this way. So. Um, Other coders are often jealous of documentation geeks just for the fact documentation is usually the most up to date with a language or framework. Documentation geeks often are not theoretical learners yet understand and write code from the official coding manuals. Pretty bonkers, dude. The more you learn in one style, the better. So you should learn your strength and exploit it for sure. But all these learning styles are useful. So the more you learn in one style, the better you get at that style. Over time, as you read documentation, your ability to understand docs just improves. Same with theory and the coder style and the watcher and the reader. So the mind just naturally adopts to the style being itself plastic. So, final note before the end. The first thing that should always be done when learning how to program is to learn the fundamentals. And I always say this in my blogs, but let me show you a picture that I absolutely love for explaining the fundamentals. So let's go to that. Fundamental. If I could spell it. Mental. Let's see. Here we go. So when you learn the fundamentals, which means things that are foundational or introductory to programming, it foundation basically means things that everything else is built on top of. So think of the foundation of a house. I don't know if I have that here. Basically, like cement, like the cement of a house. So when you learn the first 10% of the fundamentals, it is 95% relevant to all languages. So, for example, if you learn what a variable is, that exists in 95% of languages, right? All complete languages. And we're not talking about markup languages like HTML or styling. like CSS. We're talking like actual programming languages, right? If you learn variables, loops, classes, functions, scoping, blocks, if you don't know what these are all fundamental things that exist in 95% of languages. As you learn the next 20% of the fundamentals, they're 80% relevant to all languages. Then the first 30%, it's 60% relevant to all languages. Then up to the first 60%, it's relevant to 30% of all languages. So you want to start with the low hanging fruit, and that's the very beginning of programming, right? And so that's what I'm saying here. You need to focus on programming fundamentals and IDE as much as you can. And typically, people recommend sticking to one language for at least a year or for as long as you can. And lastly, picking a niche to do with all this. So for programming fundamentals, I'm real big on that. I've created blogs on several learning styles. So if you're a theoretical or a reading learner, I recommend reading Why Coding Fundamentals Are Important, and basically I explain how to learn the fundamentals in a theoretical fashion. If you're a pure code learner, I explain how to study programming without tutorials or courses. Very good for improving your code learning style. And lastly, for the video watcher and theoretical learner, how to study full coding courses, like picking your videos to most fit that style. And so each says the same thing: learn the fundamentals first, but in different styles. Each of these are viable ways to learn the programming fundamentals. Learn the fundamentals and stick to one language and one niche. So, yeah, that's it. And if you like my videos, subscribe, like, increase that algorithm, share. And yeah, happy coding, guys. Hope you enjoyed.